Welcome, everybody, to an all-new Bleav in Chargers. That's Lorenzo, Neal. I'm Borna, Nazari. We are ready for week 3 of the NFL preseason. Chargers stand at 1-1, although preseason is not all about wins and losses. Low, do you feel it, baby? We are 2 weeks away from NFL kickoff. I think 2 weeks and 1 day on the dot, man. How does it feel?
You know what? It feels great, man. Just to have football back again. And preseason, man, you just kind of want to hurry up and get through it. You kind of be like, okay, let's just limp through this and get everyone. Hopefully, everyone stays healthy and get ready for the opening day. And that's what you want to shoot for. But you watch these preseason games, and you're not really you don't get necessarily a lot of it. Good for the young guys and watch some of the guys step up and make plays. But you know these joint practices. I think there's a lot more weight on these joint practices than the preseason game. A lot, especially for the veteran guys, the guys that get a lot of reps. They do a lot of that on these joint practices.
Absolutely, man. I know the Chargers just had a joint practice with the New Orleans Saints. We saw Manti Te'o, Drew Brees, some former Chargers and Saints pull up to that practice. The Saints did defeat the Chargers 22-17. But again, not all about wins and losses. We saw Chargers backup quarterback Easton Stick actually play the entire game for the Chargers, going 21-41, 2 picks. Did get sacked 5 times. It did show a lot with his legs. Lorenzo, Neal, you were an all-pro. You were a starter. What was your kind of involvement during actual preseason games when you were a pro? You knew your job was secured. You knew you'd be on the 53-man. Were you always rooting for those undrafted guys? Kind of what were you doing on the sidelines when you knew that you had your job secure heading into September?
Well, absolutely, Barney. You always root for those guys, and you see a guy that shows flash. And for me, it was a simple guy. For one, I give you a story, and I know you'll know this name and remember this name from the past. Wes Walker. Wes
Oh,
Walker
yeah.
came to the Chargers, and he was a guy that was undrafted. And you saw him making plays at preseason. You said, "Hey, man," you just started rooting for him. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, and I remember sitting talking with with Wes, and we had a guy like I said earlier, Tim Dwight, and Tim Dwight was a great player, and we understood. But it's getting a little older, and injuries. But I told Wes, I said, Wes, look, you're auditioning tonight for not just you, but for another team as well. So you need to make sure you're playing well. I remember he had a punt return to the house, and he was a guy that just got caught up in the numbers game. And you see that a lot. You see the Chargers. Sometimes you think the guy's going to be on the 53-man roster, and all of a sudden they'll make a move, like, letting a running back go and bringing him for another guy. So things like this do happen. So, yeah. So what you do is you try to stay engaged and stay involved, and you try to root for those guys because you're once there.
No doubt about it. And listen, it's hard sometimes to not be disengaged when you know you're a starter and you're getting your bread and you're going to be okay from a financial and position perspective in the National Football League. But it should be interesting. I think week 3, I don't think, Justin Herbert's at the point, Lorenzo Neal, where we're probably not going to see him play in the preseason ever again, right? He's probably at that point where we probably won't see Herbert play. We'll find out. We still see some other quarterbacks playing around the league. I know Trevor Lawrence is getting some good action for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So listen, some takeaways so far from the Chargers. That Tula Pelote guy they took from USC in the second round looks really, really good. One of the youngest players in the draft as well, making some really, really good plays. The Chargers are going to need some young guys to help stop the run. And I think that is going to be a really nice thing. Tackle for Losh Machine. They called Tula Pelote from USC. They took him in the second round. He had a big third down pressure against first-round pick Trevor Penning, forcing a bad throw from Jameis Winston. So it's good to see some of the young guys contributing for the Chargers. The young guys on defense stepped up, and that's really exciting because we know what the older guys are going to give you. We know what Bosa, it's crazy I'm saying he's an older guy now, but it's the truth. J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack, and all these guys. So listen, Lorenzo, I think it's important. I know you want to add something. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I think it's pretty important for somebody in Brandon Staley to coach a really strong defense, in the preseason. Brandon Staley's job is by no means secure. And I think Brandon Staley, it's imperative that Staley's able to coach that defense, show why he was brought in from the LA Rams, and show that he can be an elite defensive coach. Because Charger fans, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button on Hogwatch Football and Bleav in Chargers. It's that Brandon Staley hasn't proven that he can build a legitimate elite NFL defense at all. He has not proven that he can do that. So when he has guys producing like a Tui, like other guys, it shows that it's legit stuff. So, Lo, what were you going to add? I was just mentioning how Brandon Staley, it's an important preseason for him to coach a good defense.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. When you saw the kid from USC put pressure on the quarterback and do the things that you're talking about, like you're alluding to, it's very, very important because Khalil Mack and, like you said, Joey Bosa, they're getting older and they can't play, 70, 80 snaps a game. That's not healthy for them for long term, especially if you're a Charger team that your goal is for to be playing at the end of the season in the Super Bowl and trying to lift up the Lombardi. So you do need young guys to step up and play well. And it was good to see some flashes. The guy tackling in the backfield, putting pressure on the quarterback. We saw some guys step up. I mean, a guy that, I like the big guy from Nigeria. I know he's not probably going to be on the 53, probably going to be on the practice squad, but he didn't even know, got a sack dance together, got a sack last week, and you watched him do the dance. And kids never played football, but strong. And I tell you, put him on the 50, put him on that practice squad. Here's a guy that's strong enough, that's athletic enough, that could be a player, hopefully in the near future. So guys like that, you want to see them develop. You want to see guys like that, you want to bet on those type of guys. But you watch Sticks. I know you're talking about what's daily, what he's got to do and what he wants to see. Yes, he wants to see if something happens to Herbert. But I think Herbert, needs to play a preseason. You see Mahomes still play preseason. You still see Mahomes out there. You saw Purdy that hasn't had half the time snaps that, that he's had. And he's still out there, Herbert, that he was out there and played. So I think that it's good to get continuity because you got a 2-week dead period, right after this, because it's only 3 preseason games. So you're going to have 2 weeks before you could, actually go out and hit again. So and playing a real game. So I don't see anything wrong with playing some of your starters this week. And just for the timing, and I understand they got a lot in practice, but it's just still game time is just different. So I want to see some of these guys play, and I want to go out there and see them play well, especially for the last dress rehearsal of the year.
I hope we do, honestly. I think you brought up a good point. If you have guys like Mahomes still playing, Justin Herbert, as you said, it's one thing to get reps and OTAs and training camp, but it's another thing to get some in-game reps before they take the turf. Week 1 against the Miami Dolphins. That's going to be an all-out war, Low. Week 1 against the Dolphins. This is a Dolphins team that's absolutely loaded. Coach Mike McDaniel had to deal with a lot of injuries last year, but I'll tell you this, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are maybe the best 1-2 punch from a wide receiving perspective. And the Chargers secondary, Lolo, they struggled with speed a lot last year. And I'll tell you this, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they got the afterburners, they got the jets, they got the nitrogen pack, they got everything. So welcome back to the field, J.C. Jackson. You're going to have your hands full week 1 against Tyreek Hill and company. So we'll spend another 10 days before we preview that week 1. But as you said, Lo, it's probably important some of these guys play because that ain't a laugher in week 1. That's a dogfight, huh?
Yeah, and you want to see the tight end position for this Charger team continue to develop. I know you had a guy that you brought in. He played quarterback, went from quarterback, went to defense, and played, played all up and down the line and played all different places on the field. And now they think they found a home for him at tight end. You want to see these guys continue to flourish. So I think this is very, very important to get that tune-up, the last tune-up game, work on some things that you're probably not going to have opportunity to work on, get some trickery, some gadgets there. Make the Miami Dolphins have to prepare for everything that you have. So throw a lot of repertoire at those guys. So you put those defensive coordinators and offensive coordinator that they have to prepare because you're doing a lot of things that you haven't seen in the year.
No doubt about it. I do want to talk about some other news, Chargers fans. So we know that star running back Jonathan Taylor has requested a trade from the Indianapolis Colts. And Jonathan Taylor is 24 years old. He's 2 years removed off an all-pro season. Didn't have as good of a year last year. And listen, at the end of the day, Chargers fans, football fans, the running back position is slowly dying out. And running backs know that their value has diminished. And when Jonathan Taylor turns 24 and he's about to be 25, his mind's like, I just turned 25, but dang, I need to get my contract, because running backs have to act with the notion that they're only going to get one big contract in their entire NFL career. And I think that's where Jonathan Taylor is starting to think about earlier. We saw Chargers, stud running back Austin Eckler had a Zoom meeting. He organized a Zoom meeting low with a lot of running backs talking about their value. And we've seen kind of the issue with Austin Eckler. He's trying to get his second contract and he's kind of in a logjam. He's realized he has to play this final year out the Chargers. Then he's going to be 29 years old. No team is going to want to give him more than a 2-year deal. Do you think it's smart what Jonathan Taylor's doing earlier in his career, but knowing the positional kind of struggle in trying to get a new contract?
Absolutely. I think it's imperative that he does that. And you see Eckler organizing these running backs, and this is what they have to do. They have to take care of themselves. You look at no further, look at another running back that's in the same conference. And look at the Raiders. You look at the Raiders running back and you say, wow, here's a guy led the league in rushing, all the different things, and still hasn't paid him. So I look at Eckler and all these guys, Jonathan Taylor. You look at, the Giants running back. You think about all these great running backs, Saquon. All these guys have a reason. They have a good beef with their organizations and their team. You take care of these guys and reward them now while they're still playing at a high level. Okay, if you don't want to pay them a long-term deal, then give the suckers $10 million for this year. Give them a 1 year, $10 million. Okay, if they have a good year, okay, give them $12 million for the next year. Okay, get rid of the signing bonus if that's what you're trying to do. But you got to take care of these guys. You got to find a way because now these guys, you like you alluded to, the running back position after 28, 29, you're done and you're not going to get another contract, another big contract. It's one and done for the running back position, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I remember watching Saquon Barkley tear it up at Penn State. Breaking news, in a few months, he'll be 27 years of age. And a lot of sports you talk about, that's in your physical prime. I'll tell you this, being a running back in the National Football League in 2023, that's the tail end of your prime. And I think that's why Jonathan Taylor, who's just 24 years old, doesn't turn 25 till January, is already thinking about his new contract. He's trying to work something out with Jim Irsay and the Indianapolis Colts. They haven't been able to do something. As of 48 hours ago, the Colts gave him permission to request a trade. Lorenzo, Neal, it's going to take a lot to trade for Jonathan Taylor. The Colts said they want a first-round pick at least. Jonathan Taylor was an All-Pro in 2021, would have been in 2022 had his season didn't get cut short due to an injury. Only played 11 games, almost still had 1,000 yards. Before we talk about how that relates to the Chargers, do you think Taylor's going to get traded?
I'm going to tell you right now, if you're just wanting a first-round pick, I got Baltimore on the line. I got several other teams that are on this line. You look at you look at Arizona. You look around. I know that you talk about Jonathan Taylor. He's different. He's different. He's not one of these guys. So I know that some of these teams, you say, Lorenzo, what are you talking about? They have good running backs. You look at Austin Eckler. He's a good running back, but he's not Jonathan Taylor in between tackles. But these two, they'll be a great combination, a great 1-2 punch. I think you got Jonathan, you got JT, and you have Austin Eckler in the backfield. I think that reminds me of two great running backs. And I'm not comparing Eckler. I'm not comparing Eckler to LT, but I can tell you one thing. I'm comparing Jonathan Taylor to Michael Turner, Michael the Burner. You remember those Charger years? So you got that. Now think about if you have those two running backs, so they're comparable to these two guys. So LT, Hall of Famer, arguably top 5 backs in the league. And I'm not trying to no disrespect to what Eckler's done, but he does give you some semblance of LT catching the ball out of the backfield, getting to the perimeter. So if you have those two, a 1-2 punch, because you can win with that. Think about the Chargers. They struggle in December and November running the ball with consistency. Now, if you have another physical running back that's going to get downhill, that's 4 yards in a cloud of dust, that's going to move the pile, create angle. Guess what? Now you'll see Eckler even have bigger runs because of the fact he won't be that every down back. Now he's got a guy in there that come in and they can spare and be backs by committee. Sure. So I love this. I hope the Chargers find a way to make it happen. Hey, if you're all in, give up the first-round pick for these two guys for 1 year. Who cares? Push your chips to the table if you don't think Eckler's going to be there in your long-term on their long-term plan. Then if you're the Chargers, I would do it because Eckler's still going to play and he's still going to be very, very effective for your team.
Well, there's two things I want to say to that. Number one, I really don't think it's going to require a first-round pick. I think the Indianapolis Colts are playing hardball. I do think you can get away with it with the second-round pick. I truly believe that. There's a reason why. This is Jonathan Taylor's last year under contract. Whichever team trades for Jonathan Taylor, I think the trade needs to come with an extension. So the Chargers have shown that they don't probably want to extend Austin Eckler because he's going to be 28, 29 years old. So probably if the Chargers are interested in Jonathan Taylor, they're going to be like, listen, we'll trade for you and extend you. We'll pair you up with Austin Eckler for 1 year, and then we'll let Austin Eckler walk. And Jonathan Taylor will be their lead back. I think that's what would be the right thing to do. Because Jonathan Taylor, with all due respect to Austin Eckler, he has given his blood, sweat, and tears to the Chargers franchise, and we respect the hell out of him for it. You can't blame Tom Telesco for not wanting to extend a running back who's about to be 29 years of age. And Jonathan Taylor is 24. So you trade for Jonathan Taylor, and so Neal, you're okay giving Jonathan Taylor a 4-year extension for $75 million because he's 24 years old. And then now you have your running back for the next half decade in his prime with Justin Herbert. Shit, man. I mean, that sounds pretty nice to me, huh? That sounds pretty nice to me.
Hey,
So,
hey, Borna, I love you, man, because you just keep it 100. And Austin Eckler doesn't want to hear this, and he's a great back, and he's a great man, and he's a great individual. Had several opportunities to meet this young guy, and he's a class act, and he's been the underdog ever since. You've seen what he did. He had to unseat a first rounder before, and Austin Eckler, all he does is he just, you know what? Anything, he's like that little train to think I can. Anything you can do, I can do better. So he's going to be fine. I want this guy to get paid. But if you ask me to put on my GM hat, I make this trade. If you said, hey, Lorenzo, don't be loyal to Eckler and don't be loyal to just football, but be loyal as a team if you're building to try to win a Super Bowl. I know I got my quarterback. He's not leaving the building. Now I look at this and I say, but I would not trade Eckler. For me, as a GM, I'm saying I'm not trading Eckler. You know what? I'm going to play you this year. And I sit him down and before I make this thing, I said, I'm going to let you know what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring in Jonathan Taylor, and he's going to be the guy that lead horse. But you're going to tell you right now, you're going to play, and we want you to have a great year, and we want to send you off the best way and get you, make sure you're getting paid on the free agent market. So I'm having that conversation, and then I'm doing it. If it's a second round or a third round, I'm bringing in JT because he brings a physicality to this team that you and I all last year said this team needs to be more physical. He will make these offensive line more physical because he will run in their back. He will run over them, and you don't want to get hit by JT. So I think that you bring him in as a Charger organization, like you said, for the next 5 to 7, 6 years, you have your back, and you have a good one.
No doubt about it. And Lorenzo, you brought up the point of pushing all in. I'll tell you this: the Chargers have a very, very difficult schedule in the National Football League,
Yes.
so they are going to have to be on their A game. Just a quick schedule preview, Chargers fans: Dolphins at home week 1, in Tennessee for week 2, in Minnesota for week 3. Hosting the Raiders, who are going to be better this year, hosting the Cowboys in Kansas City, hosting the Bears, at the Jets versus the hosting the Ravens in New England, hosting the Bills. This is
if you turn the ball in what you just those first 5 games, if you turn the ball over, if you lose the turnover battle, and you lose, you can start off 0-5. If you lose the turnover battle and your defensive front can't stop the run, if you show you lose, so this team understands that. But what solves when you're 3 and think about the Charger team, 3 and out, because sometimes they're not this. Now, if you bring in JT and you talk about a physicality, so now I want to make sure that I can be physical because you're going to be in a shooting match with Miami. Miami's going to score. You're going to score. But if you have a guy now that can control the tempo, and that's what running backs are now. They're that change up. They're that pitcher that's going to come in and control it. They're a closer. A good running back now in the National Football League is a closer. It's the 4 yards in the cloud of dust instead of 1, 2, 3, punt the ball because you get incomplete, didn't catch it, got a sack. So when you have a running back that can come in and close games and show you that they can be 4 and 3 yards and 4 yards with a cloud of dust, now you're going to force that team, the defensive team, to put 8 guys in the box, 9 guys in the box, play some single high safety. Now you have some one-on-one matchups with your receiver. They're playing in zone, can play zone on one side. So now you force the defense. You dictate what the defense can do to you when you can run the ball and 8 and 9 guys in the box. You now as an offense, you dictate what the defense make them play.
Well, I'll tell you this, and you brought up a good point, right? Jonathan Taylor, listen to this ridiculous statistic, Lorenzo Neal. He averages 5.1 yards per carry in his career. All right. That sounds pretty tasty to me. And I'll tell you this, the Indianapolis Colts in 2021, when he averaged a career high 5.5 yards per carry, they were 9-8. And 8 of those 9 wins were because of Jonathan Taylor. With all due respect to Carson Wentz, he was a turnover machine, and that's why they didn't win a lot of those close football games. Jonathan Taylor was winning those games. Could you imagine now having Justin Herbert? And when Lorenzo Neal mentioned now you have to stack 8 in the box, what that's going to do for Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, Donald Parham, and Justin Herbert? I mean, it's going to change the game because what we have seen as Chargers fans is Justin Herbert's a franchise superstar, magnificent quarterback, but he's had to have a pretty tough hand in terms of cards being dealt to him, not from a personnel standpoint, but from not having a running back who can run between the tackles and get 4 to 5 yards per carry. It completely changes the complexion of what defenses show them. Defenses feel like they can be more lenient on the run game and heavy on the pass game because Chargers running backs aren't able to make it from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 5. Rather, it's 1st and 10 to 2nd to 8, so it's more predictable that the Chargers are going to pass. But if you're able to get a difference maker, a joker, and Jonathan Taylor, who can make that 1st and 10 to 2nd and 5, and not only it's going to change his life, it's going to change Justin Herbert and that entire franchise's life. And Lorenzo, Neal, you are my number one teacher when it comes to the impactfulness of the run game in the NFL. I'm telling you, it's so important. Look what the 49ers do. So, crap, man. I'm selling you. You're selling me on Jonathan Taylor. How nice would that be, huh? He'd be the best running back since LT with this Chargers organization. No doubt about it, right?
You're absolutely right. And here's the thing: we got to go back and we're consistent. We're going to continue to say, hey, look, we love what Eckler's brought to the table and love what he's done for this organization. And he's been a team player, and the guy's been through so much, and he's just a class act and just a leader. But right now it's about Super Bowl. And let me tell you, both these guys can help you win a Super Bowl this year. You get both these guys, it changes the dynamics of the offense, but it makes your defense better instantly. I'll tell you why. Because just like we alluded to how you have to sit there and play 8, 9 guys in the box, now you can grind and your defense can be a lot fresher. You think about how many times this Charger team was 3 and out because of the fact, couldn't get consistency. Somebody break down on the offensive line. Now you have your offensive line back. You got this offense. Now you got the two-headed monster. You can put both these two guys in the backfield. You can fake screen and run a draw. You can do so many different things with the offense. And now your defense becomes more physical because now they're fresh. When your team can just run the ball and push the ball, it wears defenses out. So I think that it makes your whole team better when you have that type of mindset, just the physicality.
Yeah, and there was actually a report from NFL Rumors today on Twitter, a very big Twitter account that reports a lot of news. They said the Chargers have been mentioned as a team that could have interest in Jonathan Taylor. And I think, Lorenzo, you brought up a really good point that, listen, you can pair up Jonathan Taylor with an Austin Eckler, for the year. But there's obviously going to be a lot of teams who have interest in Jonathan Taylor. I think one that comes to mind for me is the Miami Dolphins. They were in the Dalvin Cook sweepstakes. They need a running back. They're building out a good line. They have a solid defense, led by Christian Wilkins. They obviously have the wide receiver tandem. They need a legit they need a legit running back. So, it should be really interesting, Lo, to see kind of what happens here. I'll tell you this. I think in the next week or so, we're going to see some flurries of NFL trades kind of starting to occur here. But listen, man, I'm so excited for the year to start. I'll be at SoFi for a few games this year, man. It should be a pretty interesting time. And I think this is a very crucial year for this franchise. It's a crucial year for head coach Brandon Staley to really mark his imprint on this Chargers team. And I think if he doesn't, he could be on the hot seat. I'm going to be really watching this defense this year. I know there's a lot of storylines. A lot of people want to see Kellen Moore and how he does with his year with the Chargers. But I am watching that defense. I need to see improvement from that defense this year, Lorenzo, Neal.
Hey, so am I. And I'm looking forward to seeing this defense. I think they'll be much improved. I think they understand all the talk that they've had. And everyone talked about the defense was supposed to be great last year, and they underachieved. And Staley is a defensive-minded guy. He understands what's at stake, and you brought in a great offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, so you want to see this offense become more consistent. And Kellen Moore would love to. You look at the Dallas Cowboys, what they did as far as running the ball, and Kellen Moore knew that he had a two-head monster, and so now he may have that same opportunity. So I think that, yes, I want to see this defense fly around. I want to see this defense get off the field on third down. I want to see them be a lot more stiffer against the run. So there's a lot of things that we need to do in order for this team to get where we think they can go, and that's win a championship.
No doubt, man. And listen, the AFC is an absolute gauntlet. If you're able to get through the AFC, I think you're able to get through anything. There's so many teams with so many good quarterbacks, and there's a lot of teams that people aren't even talking about, right? Everyone's talking about the Bengals, the Ravens. Heck, let's see how Deshaun Watson has this year. First full year in the system with the Cleveland Browns. Let's not forget how freaking good of a quarterback he was, for many years with the Houston Texans, the AFC West. Obviously, you have Kansas City, but now you have Sean Payton in Denver. How are the Denver Broncos going to look this year with Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo with the Raiders? I've heard a lot of reports that Aiden O'Connell, the rookie out of Purdue, has looked really, really good for the Vegas Raiders. So
he's been swinging it.
Could you imagine, Lo, that division having 4-star quarterbacks? It's just, can some of us go to the NFC? Can we file a report to go to the NFC, please?
Exactly. And I watched, Sean Payton's Denver Broncos. Sean's beating those guys up. He's fit and physical. They hate training camp. I talked to some of the coaches, Minuski, who's a coach I knew from the Chargers.
Greg Minuski, right?
Greg Minuski. So Sean Payton wanted to see how tough you are. He wants to see if he can break guys. He's running those guys. He's going old-time training camp. He wants to see what's underneath your hood. No question. So Denver's going to be a much improved team. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to do this. Quarterback, comeback player of the year. I'm going to go right now and say Russell Wilson. Just watching the guy run, look like he's in a little better shape, looks like he's a little lot faster. And Sean Payton is putting him in the cookie grinder. Sean Payton is putting him in that grinder and blender and saying, look, I want to see what you're working with. No more can you have your trainer here. No more can you do all these things. You're going to do what I want you to do. So Sean Payton has really, really put Russell Wilson under the gun, and I want to see how he handles it. And I think that this guy probably, in my opinion, I know a lot of people said he's done. I think this is going to be one of the comeback players of the year.
Wow, that's a bold take. And listen, I don't doubt it. I think I've been watching Hard Knocks. I'm not sure if you have, and they had some features of Nathaniel Hackett, former Broncos head coach, now OC of the Jets. And this guy is a smart football mind, but he's a goofball. And I look back on it now in Hard Knocks. I'm like, how the heck was this guy the head coach of the Denver Broncos? And I think that's why it was clearly obvious in the reflection of their performance last year. But yeah, I mean, listen, I didn't know those reports about Denver. Sean Payton. Listen, if Sean Payton can't turn Denver around, I don't know who can. So that was a big get for the Denver Broncos. So Lorenzo, Neal, great chatting with you as always. Next time we talk, we'll be gearing up for week 1. And to all us listeners, to all you viewers of the Bleav in Chargers show, make sure you go check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Smash that like and subscribe on Hogwatch Football, or sign out, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.